Hi, welcome to the February meeting of Owner Financing Club. I'm really glad to see several of you on here and more coming and hopefully more showing up. Hi, Mike. Greetings back to you too. Always great to have you on board. Mike, one of our members in I think you're in Orange County, Mike. He actually helped me out with a broker price opinion, BPO, on a deal that I just put together a couple months ago, a couple weeks ago, actually. So thanks again to you, Mike. A lot of times we can help each other out in the community, and that's kind of fun to do. So tonight, and hopefully you remember Randy Hughes. If not, you're in for a nice surprise if you haven't been introduced, if you're a newer member of the community. We're going to be talking about land trust tonight, and and hopefully not just the general things that you need to know, but hopefully we can go over one or two deals where we actually use land trust. And as always, you can type in your questions in the chat box, and we can go from there. Okay, so Randy, your mic's still a little close to your mouth.
All right, how's that?
I hope that'll be a little bit better. Sorry.
I'll try not to breathe the entire
Yeah.
hour.
If you could just hold your breath for a bit, that'd be great. Okay, just gonna run through a few quick announcements. Our last transaction review and calculator practice on February 7th, I thought was really good. We went through several different scenarios that may be a little different than you would normally see. So go ahead and check that out on the site. It would be under the transaction review post or category. So, and the next one is Thursday, March 7th, transaction review and calculator practice. And if you have any deals you specifically of your own that you specifically want me to go over, just email me, and I'll try to use your transaction as an example. And I didn't put this up here on the page, but something I'm going to be doing for the virtual coffee, the Q&A session that is usually at the end of every month, the end of on a Saturday. I'm going to be out of town. I'm actually going to be in North Carolina from next Friday for a week, so we're not going to have that this time. But I want you to. What I'm going to do is take questions that you guys email to me throughout the month, and then I will answer them. If I haven't already done so, I'll answer them on the last Saturday of every month as a Q&A session, so that we're getting some value out of that time, even if no one, is able, to call in on a Saturday morning. So anyway, if you ever have any questions, please feel free to email me. And if I don't get back to you via email, I'll answer them. Usually on the last Saturday. This Saturday, no, because I'll be out of town, but I'll do it sometime in the next week or so that gets done. Tuesday, April 2nd, I'm going to have my second ever happy hour in the Queendom. That's going to be in Orange County, so if you're in Southern California and you can make that, it would be great to have you there. I haven't decided which restaurant we're going to hold that in or what venue, but would love to have you get the word out. Anyone, you guys or anyone that might be interested to join me, that's going to be like Irvine-ish, Costa Mesa area. On April 19th to the 21st, we're having the first ever Ultimate Property Paper and Protection Summit. It's the note training. Oops, this is a lie. The note training is actually going to be I'm going to do is on the 19th. That changed. Then we have land trust, the protection part training on Saturday the 20th. And then we have Cliff Gager, who was my guest last month, who's going to be teaching us about wholesaling. He's a really incredible mentor. I have never seen anyone have the results with their students that he does. So this is a pretty nice introduction to things in general. The following weekend, you can see that I'm going to be gone basically the last half of April practically, but April 26th and 27th, Bill Mancaro, who's been in the note business forever, He's holding his Paper Source Symposium, Cash Flow Profits in Las Vegas. It's not that expensive to attend. They don't do any pitching at all. It's just a way for you to learn from and integrate network with people that are in the business. So I hope I get to see you at one or both of these events. Okay, so now Randy, going back to you. How are you tonight? You're not in your normal venue. You are in.
No, I am in Miami, and just want you to know it's everything I can do to stay awake because I'm 3 hours ahead of you.
Oh, is it past your
And,
bedtime? I'm sorry.
it gets past 9 o'clock, and I get a little sleepy. But,
No. I really.
that's why I'm breathing.
That's why you're breathing so heavy. Yeah, you're
That's
starting to
right.
snore already. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I get you, and I appreciate you doing that because I actually go to bed usually between 9:30 and 10 myself. So I can appreciate that this is a sacrifice for you. Oh
Well, but my
gosh.
ego is such that I would stay up to all hours just to be able to talk
Oh, that is not true.
and, and
Randy.
to teach primarily. I love to teach and talk about this subject and how it goes hand in glove with what you do.
Yeah.
Um, it's just so creative, and you just can't find this information hardly anywhere else, especially not combined together. The note business and the land trust business.
Hmm.
So I think your listeners are in for a real treat tonight.
Yeah, well, I hope they walk away with one or two ideas that will help them or spark an interest and a curiosity. But just in general, I mean, maybe you can go over your whatever your 10, not 10-second, but maybe your 2-minute general speech about land trusts in general, and then maybe we can get into some specifics here in a bit.
Okay, I would be glad to do that. Um, I am a real estate investor, and I think that's important for your listeners to know that I'm not just some guy that's out talking about something that's esoteric or that he doesn't deal with every day. I make my living in the house business. I'm a house guy. I started buying houses in 1969, and I haven't stopped yet. Um, about 30 some years ago, I discovered the benefit of not owning real estate in my own personal name. After I'd accumulated 10 or 15 houses, it dawned on me one day that, hey, all these are in my name, and anybody can go to the courthouse records and look that up, and that makes me a target. So I
From
started
who? From
researching,
who?
and well, it makes you a target from pretty much any of the takers in the world, and there are plenty of those out there these
Those
days. Uh,
CFLs, those CFLs you're always talking about.
yes, those contingency fee
Yeah.
lawyers. Um, but not only them, but anybody else that's looking to get rich the old-fashioned way, and that is by suing somebody
Oh,
instead of working
that's
hard.
old fashioned. Okay.
That's the old-fashioned way now, instead of working hard. So if you're serious about this business, the real estate business, whether it's ownership, management, equity and notes, uh, and if you're going to build any sort of wealth, you need to start thinking now before you get too big and have to retrofit everything. You need to think now about how to protect that wealth that you're building. And I think it's just a good philosophy just to be more private in everything that you do. I humorously tell people to go out and chop down their mailbox. Just chop it down at the base and forget that you have a mailbox. Don't have a mailbox at your house. Use a post office box for all your communication with the world. Don't tell people where you live. Don't put your home address on anything, and don't own anything in your own personal name, whether that's the title to real estate or a note or a mortgage or a deed of trust. You need to be more concerned about your privacy, especially in this day and age. It's getting, well, it's kind of funny that my wife used to always say that I was just paranoid 25 years ago when I started researching and writing about these subjects. And now people seem to think it's a little more mainstream to think that your personal information should be kept private and out of the public eye as best you can. And there are lots of ways of doing this, but the least expensive way to be more private is to get out of the courthouse records and quit signing things that go into the courthouse records. And for real estate investors, whether it's a note or a mortgage or title to real estate, the best way to do that is through the use of a land trust, because it will hold the title for you in somebody else's name called the trustee, and you will be the beneficiary, and no one will know that. That's not public information. So this is a real cool way and inexpensive way to hold title to things without your name showing up in the courthouse records and you being a target for a frivolous lawsuit.
Yeah, and you remind me, Randy, because you always say, okay, so let's say I've got a guy, his name's John Smith. He's going to be my trustee. He's either a real estate friend of mine, or let's even call him my attorney even. So so how is it if his name goes on title on the grant deed as John Smith, trustee of the blah 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 trust? Now, how is it that he's not personally liable, or his social security number or his personal issues of credit won't affect title to the property? Because you make the distinction that John Smith is one entity and John Smith, comma, trustee is another entity. But like when I'm filling out the title statement of information, to close on those things, they're asking information about John Smith as if he is a normal entity, a person that would be liable. You know what I mean? Like they're asking for his social, blah blah blah.
Well, wait a minute, Don. Who's they? In this example, who's they?
The title company, when they're asking you to fill out all those forms when you're buying a property. I always get that statement of information thing that they're asking for the trustee to fill in all this information, including the social.
Yeah. Well, you don't give them the social, that's for sure. And let's start at the top. The land trust does not get a tax ID number.
Right.
All tax benefits, good, bad, or indifferent, flow through to the beneficiary. The trustee is not responsible for those tax benefits. He's not reporting them. He's not doing anything but holding title to the real estate. So you definitely do not want to give out the trustee's personal information, assuming you know that. Because it's not to be reported in his name. Nothing's reported in the trustee's name. The beneficiary reports all activity with that property. So if the beneficiary is you individually, Don Rickabaugh, then you would have to give the title company your name and your social security number for reporting purposes.
Yeah.
So you're selling the property, and I understand the title company wants to know how we're going to report this income to the federal government. And that's why a lot of real estate investors don't own the land trust in their personal name. They're not the beneficiary to the land trust personally.
Right.
They set up an LLC or a corporation, and then they give that corporation or LLC's name and tax ID number to the title company, and that's how it gets reported.
Okay, so you're saying that even though it's going in the name of John Smith, trustee, when I'm filling out that title form, I should fill in the beneficiary information, like my corporate entity, instead? Because the reason they're wanting to do that search is to see if there's any probably liens or judgments on anybody who's selling or buying or something.
Right, and they'll do a search on the title of the property as well. And there could be a lien against the property. It wouldn't be necessarily against the trustee, but it'd be against the property. Now, one of the benefits of using a land trust is that if there's a lien or judgment against the beneficiary, it cannot be recorded against the property.
Right, that is great.
Just think about it. I mean, it makes sense. If you don't own the property, which you don't, if you're the beneficiary to a land trust, you do not own the property, you own the trust. So if you don't own the property, nobody can put a lien against it because of something you've done. However, that doesn't mean the property could not have a lien against it for other reasons. For example, you hire a contractor to put in brand new windows. You spend $5,000. You give him $1,000 down, and when the $4,000 bill comes due, you don't pay it. That contractor can put a lien against the property for improvements that he did, regardless of whether it's in a trust or not.
Right.
So, the benefit there is, I see a lot of people, especially now after going through this bad economic situation, with liens and judgments against their name. And pretty much the only way they can own real estate again is if they use a land trust. Otherwise, those liens and judgments will immediately attach to any property that they might buy in the future that they title in their own names.
Yeah, I remember that story that you told at another venue where somebody that you knew that owed you money accidentally, briefly, for a second, took their property out of the trust to do something, and you nabbed them right then.
Yeah,
Wasn't that
yeah,
that condo that his daughter owned it or
his daughter
something? Blah
owned.
blah blah. I've
Right. In fact, I had a guy call me. Had a guy on I do a monthly my Land Trust University. I do a monthly coaching call for members of my Land Trust University, and there
right.
was a guy on the call a couple of months ago who gave a prime example of how this worked, and without getting into too much detail, he took a whole bunch of property, over $1 million worth of property, out of land trusts to get some financing,
Right.
and was going to put them back in, and whammo, he got slammed with a lien against those properties, and it cost him $1 million in equity because of what he did. So, yeah, it's very, very interesting, the economic times that we're in now, and it makes it even more important to consider these concepts. I'm down here in Florida. Florida was kind of like California. It got hit hard. And the house that I'm renting right now, the guy paid $250,000 for 3 years ago, and it's worth $160,000 today. There are a tremendous number of people down here that could not keep their properties, couldn't afford to keep their properties.
Right.
They were homeowners, now they're tenants.
Gotcha.
But they're tenants with large deficiency judgments against their name.
Oh, the deficiency judgment.
Yes,
Ooh.
yes, and so that just precludes them. They can't get financing because that liens against them, so they don't qualify for financing. They're probably going to be tenants the rest of their life, which is good for us that own real estate and rent out to them, because they're, many of them are very good people. They're used to taking care of a house, but just can't afford to buy a house anymore, so they become very good tenants. But if they do want to try to buy in the future, they're going to have to do it through a land trust, so that deficiency judgment doesn't immediately attach to anything they buy in the future.
Gotcha. Okay, so I have a question. I'm going to stop and read this question. This is from Ken. Hi, Ken. Thanks for this question. He's saying, how much does an LLC cost for each note? Wait, each note that you have, and if you have 10 notes, do you need to pay the state of California since, yeah, we have an $800 fee for each LLC on the 10 notes, or $8,000, which is a large fee to pay each year. Yeah, whew, yeah, that would be crazy. Now, I think if I'm not mistaken, Ken, you're talking here about what if you held notes, your deeds of trust investments or mortgage investments in a land trust, would you have to pay $800 per year? And the answer is a big fat no way.
No way.
Because you wouldn't do that for property, so we're not going to do that for paper. I mean, I'll let you speak, Randy, to that, but I've heard people usually, are okay putting, maybe five in any one land trust, or something like that, or each one is a different land trust, but the same entity, the LLC or the corporation or whatever, can be the beneficiary on all of those. So
Yeah, yeah. Now you're on the right track, Don. These land trusts are so easy to set up, Don. You just put the forms on your computer and you can spit them out all day. So there's no reason to put more than one asset in each land trust.
Okay, so you
It's
wouldn't
just
even ever
it's
put
just dumb.
two, like two properties
Never.
or two
Oh
notes or
no.
anything.
No, 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 no. I would never put more than one of anything in a land trust. It just doesn't make sense. I mean, when it takes me 5 minutes to produce a land trust, why would I why would I not do that to protect those assets from each other from a liability standpoint?
Yeah, absolutely.
There's just no advantage. 5 minutes of my time is not a disadvantage, and so everything goes into its own separate land trust. And because Ken, great question, because land trusts are not recorded anywhere, and they have to pay no fees like the LLCs do, then you can use these things as much as you want with very very little cost to you. And like Dawn said, yeah, you may want to set up. Let's say you have 10 notes, or 10 mortgages, whatever it is that you're investing in. You can put a note or a mortgage in a land trust. So you set up 10 land trusts, and you have 10 different notes in 10 different land trusts, but the beneficiary to the land trust could be one LLC.
Okay,
And
great. So Ken's asking how much the cost to set up a land trust for 10 notes, and wouldn't the LLC you use as the entity cost as the lawyer's fee for each note? I don't think so. Here's the thing. Like Randy's talking like it's so easy to do, and I didn't really believe him until like I bought your course, Randy. I bought all of your stuff. Your
yeah, I remember
everything,
that.
right?
Yeah,
So what was that?
yeah,
2 years ago or something? And
yeah.
so
A
then
couple
and
of
then and then it was supposed to be easy, but I was still stressed the first time I was using it. So basically, that's what's so great about your Land Trust University, and just what a general nice guy you are, and how often you actually answer your phone, is you kind of helped me through things getting that done. So like, yeah, if you, it's going to be expensive. Would you say if you pay an attorney, they're going to charge you anywhere from 500 to 1500 per trust? But if you buy Randy's system once, for the basic is what? How much is your basic course?
Well, the download is $397. Hard copy is $497, and the hard copy comes with a DVD of me teaching a
Yeah,
live
that's
seminar.
that's worth it. And then if they go to the advanced route, because I use the advanced, in your advanced thing, you have the Virginia Land Trust and a few extra
Yeah,
things.
and some personal property trusts and whatnot. And the advanced download is $696, 797 for a hard copy. Um, but there are a couple ways of doing this. One is just go to my website and buy it. And we'll give you information at the end of this presentation as to how you might do that. The other is to come to the April meeting,
Yeah, it'd be fun to
because
see people
you
there.
know well, for $997 they can get 3 days of instruction from me, you, and Cliff. I mean, that's just a killer deal. And they would get my basic home study course and all the forms.
Oh, the forms
Uh,
come with
by,
that too?
the forms come with it,
Yeah.
so they would get that uh, at the April event as well. So, a couple ways of doing it. If you can't make the April event, then get the home study off my website now. If you can come to the April event, and if you can wait a couple of months, then you can just come and get it then.
Yeah. So I hope that helps. Definitely so worth it. Like I've used it your things actually only 3 times, because I actually haven't got to the point where I'm putting my notes in it yet, but I've got to do that. Like I've got to set myself, mentally up to do that. I'm probably closing on one the next couple weeks, and I think I'm gonna do that for those, because I really don't want to show up on public record for anything, at
Well, you
all.
don't. And Don, can I expand on that a little bit?
Okay.
when you're loaning people money and you're getting a mortgage and a note, and you're doing it in your individual name, people tend to not be as intimidated
Uh,
by an individual as they are by an entity.
because an entity
And
sounds like it has a legal department.
well, yeah, and think of it this way, if money gets tight and I'm going to decide who am I going to pay the bills this week, and I could either pay old Don out in California, who's 4,000 miles away from me, or I can pay somebody else. I might decide to pay somebody else instead of Don because Don just doesn't sound threatening to me. But now, if you put that note in a land trust, and the name of the land trust is, the International Lending Fund, or something that sounds real official, they may not be as anxious to stiff that person or
Mm-hmm.
that entity as they would you as an individual person. So I think you'll get a lot more credibility out of your note buying business if you use land trusts and entities with names that sound a little more official than just Don Rickabaugh out in California.
So just a side question. How official do you think Note Queen sounds? Dun dun dun.
Well, I would add something a little more worldly, like Note Queen Alligators Inc.
Or
or
how
something.
about Note Queen head rolling services or something?
Yes,
Yeah.
you better pay us. Note Queen, you better pay us. We break thumbs.
Oh gosh, I guess I'll have to work on that. Okay, Ken's coming back again. Don, have you set up your own land contract and any of your notes or real estate? And did you run into any problems with title companies or anyone else? Ken, this is super great. And I'm glad you asked this because it's a great segue into one of the deals I want to talk about and actually some questions I have myself to Randy. But first, before I forget, Randy, just go over, because in the beginning I asked you, we talked about how judgments, liens, and all sorts of things on the beneficiaries can't attach to the property when it's in a land trust. But if John Smith is my trustee, why can't a lien or judgment against him attach to the property?
Well, it's because John Smith, the person, the individual, is different than John Smith, comma trustee.
How so?
Now, in the real world, sometimes this accidentally happens, where John Smith gets a lien against him as an individual, and it does show up against him as trustee, and that happens once in a while in the real world, and you have to petition the court to have that judgment removed because they've accidentally done that. Somebody screwed up in the law office that filed the lien and filed it against John Smith as trustee. And if it has nothing to do with that property, then it cannot be attached to that property. And there's over 100 years of case law in Illinois and Florida and many other states that say that the liability of the trustee is limited to the asset that's in the trust. And any judgment or lien against him as an individual will not attach to the trust because he's wearing the hat of the trustee, not the individual. So it's just it's kind of like saying if I had an LLC and a corporation, and I had Randy Hughes Inc. and Randy Hughes LLC, and somebody goes and files a lien against Randy Hughes Inc., and it accidentally also attaches to Randy Hughes LLC. Quirks like that happen in the law, but in general,
how
it
much
doesn't
does it
happen.
how much does it usually cost, and how long does it take to correct something like that?
Well, you'd have to hire a lawyer to do it. So it could easily cost you a few $100s to get that filing made and the lien removed. But again, I don't want to imply that happens a lot. It doesn't. I'm just saying that it's not impossible that it does happen. But any way you look at it, the trustee's personal liens will not affect the property that's in the land trust. Now, the other interesting thing you mentioned, I think, a little bit earlier about the credit of the trustee, Um, the same thing happens when you borrow money using a land trust. The borrower is the beneficiary,
Right.
but the trustee signs the mortgage that gets recorded as collateral for the loan.
Right.
And so what happens is the reporting to the credit agency doesn't happen in the name of the trustee and doesn't
Oh.
happen in the name of the beneficiary.
Wait, because are you saying who who signs the loan document? Who signs the note?
The beneficiary would sign the note or a guarantee.
A
Now,
guarantee.
most banks do not record notes, but some of them do. So certainly you'd want to ask before you sign a note with a bank as the beneficiary of a land trust, are you going to record this note? Because if they're going to record the note, it defeats the whole purpose of using the land trust. But 99% of the banks in the world don't record notes. They just record mortgages. That's the collateral for the note. So if the borrower defaults on the note, the bank has collateral. They can go get the real
Right.
estate as
No,
collateral.
okay, so
And
just backing up, so sorry. But so
mhm,
in this deal, one of the deals that I could talk about tonight, although I'm not sure if I will, but it's a private party, so they don't care that it's in a trustee. So that's easy enough. But the escrow and title insisted that the trustee, well, of course, to protect my privacy, they're the ones that executed the deed of trust, which is recorded, and because they're signing that, they're also signing the note. So I don't know how the reporting happens, because they title gets kind of confused with this, and escrow does too. They go, well, who
yeah,
are we going to report to on, and blah 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 blah. And frankly, it's a little clunky for me the first couple of times through, going, which am I supposed to fill out and give them, and which am I not, and
mhm.
what do I have to, blah blah blah. So anyway, well, that's instructive. So any clarification, or did I just talk around myself right there?
Well, I know what you're saying. Oftentimes, title companies, whether it's a real estate transaction or a note transaction, they have forms, and they want those forms completed. And I've found that it works pretty well to do a couple of different things. For example, if we're dealing with a real estate property, oftentimes they'll ask to see a copy of the trust agreement.
Right, right.
Well, I don't want to show them a copy of my trust agreement, so I'll give them what's called a certification of trust. And that's one of the forms that comes with my home study course. A certification of trust is a one-page document that basically says, yes, this trust exists, and I, as the trustee, am certifying that it does exist, and it was formed on January 31st, 2013, and it's a California trust, and all the basics, but does not tell them who the beneficiary is. And oftentimes that's enough. That's so don't be confrontational. Just try to go with the flow and realize that these people are just anxious for their next coffee break. They really aren't picking on you.
Yeah, and plus they're
They
just,
just they just need something to put in the
yeah,
file.
they're actually just trying to hop to it because there's so much pressure on them from a regulatory standpoint right now of getting in trouble and losing their license and blah blah blah. It's a
Right,
lot.
right.
Um,
So so just ask them. Say, I really don't want to give you the trust agreement. Would a certification of trust work? Um, Now the other thing is, and I get into this in my seminars in more detail, but uh, if you get in a situation where they say, no, we got to have a copy of the trust agreement, then a land trust agreement uh, is a contract, and it can be 1 page long or it could be 100 pages long, depending on how much meat you want to put in the contract.
mhm.
And the neat thing about these land trusts is they can be amended very easily. So if you have to show them a trust agreement, then whip out your old 1 page trust agreement and show it to them. And the day after closing, you amend that 1 page trust agreement to your 100-page trust agreement, and you're off and running.
Gotcha. That's kind of the blessing and also the bane, though, because sometimes what makes attorneys who don't know much about trust nervous is that you can do so much on an unrecorded basis with the trust. But that's also what you
Right.
like
And
about them. But it's also what makes
that's what I love about them.
that's what also makes them nervous. So I'm going to talk.
I like making attorneys nervous.
Unless you need them to fund your deal. So I'll talk about that in a second. But I have another question that came in, and and before I forget too. When you're saying going back to the what if like John Smith gets as the trustee gets accidentally a personal lien of his or judgment gets attached to the property, and you're saying there is multitudes of case law in these various states, because there's a few states, I want to say 5 or 7, that have actual statutes, land trust statutes, but
Right.
California does not happen to be one of those that has specific land trust statute, but from everything I gather, our basic principles are very supportive of trusts in general. So
That's true. That's true. And land trusts are legal in California. You can set up a California land trust to hold these deeds or mortgages, whatever it is you're investing in, or you can set up an out-of-state land trust to hold title to your California deeds and mortgages.
right.
And that's what we get into in the advanced
Right.
class.
So a California judge is not going to have a problem if it got to that point. They're not going to have a problem removing a lien that, like, are you going to go, hey, Mr. Judge, do you know that there's statutes about this? I know there's no land trust law in California, but are they going to know? Is that going to be a slam dunk? Will it ever get to that point where you have to educate a judge or something about whether or not a lien should stand? Or is that a title company issue?
Yeah. Well, think about it this way. Judges are attorneys that have failed in their business.
Oh, harsh.
And the reason why they're judges is because they don't know much about the law, and that's what attorneys do. They use the attorneys in court to tell them what the law is. And then the attorneys come in and say, well, here's the case law. Here's what's happened in the past, Your Honor. And then Your Honor goes and gets his coffee and sits in his chambers and studies it and says, oh, yeah, okay, well, that makes sense. And then he makes his ruling. So the attorneys are designed in our legal system to be the research arm for judges.
Oh, interesting.
And that's how that works. And yeah, it's not too big of a deal. My brother, I give you a short story. My brother was a trustee in Chicago for a friend of his who got foreclosed on, quit paying the bills, and they foreclosed on it. And of course, he was served as the trustee of the land trust on the foreclosure papers. And he didn't want to be, just hassled with it. He didn't have any personal liability, but he didn't want the hassle. So he had his attorney petition the court to have him removed, and basically he resigned as trustee, and therefore he was out of the case for the future foreclosure. So you can hire and fire trustees on a moment's notice. Another great benefit to these trust animals, and you can use in-state trusts and out-of-state trusts, and it's just so much fun to learn about these things and to use them. I just thoroughly enjoy using them, and I find something almost monthly that's new to use these for in new and creative ways for privacy, asset protection, and increasing profits.
Okay, awesome. Well, that's a good segue into moving on, although Raphael has submitted a question. Hi, Raphael. Good to hear from you. Okay, hello. So to have the full benefit with the use of trust, it always has to be paired with an LLC? Let's just reiterate that whole structure. Just
Okay.
real.
No, there are a lot of benefits to having your property in a land trust and you just being the beneficiary individually. But the liability here flows through on a land trust to the beneficiary. The trustee, we said earlier, is not liable. So somebody's got to be liable for what happens on the property in the trust, and that liability flows down through the trust and to the beneficiary of the trust. So if you want to limit your liability for property in the land trust,
This is asset
that's
protection. Instead of just privacy, we're
right.
talking asset protection here.
Good point. Good point. Then you want to set up an LLC because the LLC gives you asset protection that a land trust doesn't, and a land trust gives you privacy that an LLC doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
And so we link them together to get the best of both worlds.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's just like here's an example of when somebody had an LLC they could have used, but they chose to use their own personal names instead. This is a couple that they had a short sale on, and I don't know if anything else, but their credit was bad, although they had a big chunk of change and were quite well off from a cash flow perspective, but their credit was bad. But they decided they were going to buy another home all cash for $200,000, but because they wanted to disappear from owning anything ever again, they used a land trust at my recommendation, and I said, well, it's up to you. You have to think about your tax consequences and other things that I'm not, you need to go talk to your CPA or whatever about tax consequences. They ultimately decided, because it's a low risk, it's their primary residence, since it's low risk, that they would take it in their personal name so they could take that homestead exemption for their property taxes. Does that follow? Hello, Randy?
Yes. Was there a question
Yeah,
there?
so that if they were told and under the impression that if they used an LLC as the beneficiary of their primary residence, they would not get their homestead exemption for the property taxes, which are substantial in Florida.
Well, that could be true. It could be true, Dawn. There are 3,200 counties in the United States, and every single one of them treats that tax exemption issue differently. So before I put my personal residence in a land trust with an LLC as a beneficiary, I would check and see if that would prevent me from getting the homestead exemption.
Right.
Now, most counties will allow you to put your property into a land trust, your personal residence, and you personally be the beneficiary,
Mm-hmm.
and still get your homestead exemption.
Right.
And at a minimum, that's what I would do.
Right.
Again, yeah, your liability exposure is much less on your personal residence. You've got insurance coverage, so you're probably pretty well protected.
And your
your
kids that are your only tenants aren't likely to sue you if they fall down the stairs or something.
Well, I wouldn't bet on that.
Oh God.
I wouldn't bet on that. If they got a hold of a lawyer, they'd sue you.
Yeah, you'd be surprised what they have on Cartoon Network, these days. But hey, just one last question on that. Can the LLC, this is Raphael again, be out of state as well to avoid the California $800?
Oh, Raphael, you're thinking deep now. I like that question. There are many benefits, Raphael, to using out-of-state entities, no matter what state you live in. And what I mean by that is, for example, I live in Illinois. All my rental real estate is in Illinois. I do not use Illinois land trusts. I do not use Illinois LLCs or corporations. So out of state is always good, especially if you pick the right state. Now, many people have these single-member LLCs and think that they have asset protection when they really don't, because there have been a lot of court cases recently ruling against the asset protection benefits of a single-member LLC. So, Wyoming and Nevada are going to be your two best states to form an LLC. They both have laws on the books that extends asset protection benefits to single-member LLCs, which means if you go after those entities, the best you can get is a charging order. You can't grab the entire LLC, which is what you can do for single-member LLCs in most other states. So yeah, I like to use out-of-state. I like Nevada. I like Wyoming. Now, more to your question, though. The taxing authorities in California are becoming more and more creative every day on how they can get their hands in your pockets. And one of the ways they are interpreting the California law, even though many California attorneys do not interpret it this way, the taxing board is trying to interpret it by saying if the beneficiary of a land trust is an out-of-state entity, we want to charge that $800 franchise fee.
So trying to close the loop on that.
They're trying to close the loop on that. But now let's think that through. How will they find out since the trust agreement on a land trust is not recorded? So nobody knows who the beneficiary is, whether it's an individual or an LLC. How would they find out that an LLC was the beneficiary to a land trust that owned property in California? Well, you might argue that they would find out from your tax return. They would see your state tax return come through and somehow would be able to determine that you're getting income from an LLC. And then they could haul you in and say, well, all right, show us this LLC. Where is it at? It's not registered. We want you to register it and start paying fees. But the reason why that logic doesn't work is if you look at your tax return, your state tax return, the top number on page 1 starts with the bottom number of page 1 of your federal tax return, your adjusted gross income. And the adjusted gross income on your federal return takes into consideration income from all entities, including LLCs. So the LLC produces a K-1 and gives you the tax information that you put on your 1040. So yeah, the feds would know that you have an LLC, but the state doesn't know it.
Huh.
And they can't identify it by looking at your tax return.
That's interesting.
So I'm not sure they would ever figure it out. If they did figure it out and somehow found out that you had an LLC, they are trying to apply that $800 franchise tax to any entity they can get their hands on. But right now, I wouldn't worry a whole lot about it. I don't think they'd ever figure it out.
Okay, that's good. And along the same lines, I think, or at least of a previous line we had going, this is Ken again, and I'll get back to the other thing, Ken, too, because oh gosh, I can't believe how fast time's going. But okay, let's say, let's take the scenario where we have 10 properties, each is in its own land trust, but the same LLC is the Benny on all of them. I think this is where Ken is going with this. What if one of your rentals, one of these 10, had a fire, someone got hurt, the land trust doesn't make the lawsuit go away. So what happens when they sue you for not having a smoke alarm? Doesn't mean they can only go after the one property, or since that LLC owns all of them? I mean, if you're sued, can't they say, what else do you have? And if you're don't you have to disclose your LLC is the Benny on all 10?
Well, yes, as a short answer, they would be able to find out in a lawsuit through what they call discovery what you own. And you would have to be honest, and you'd have to say, well, I'm the member of this LLC. But that doesn't mean, again, if it's a multi-member LLC or if it's an LLC formed in a state where you get single-member asset
like
protection.
Nevada or Wyoming.
It doesn't mean that they can just come in and take over the LLC. They can get a charging order which says that if you make any distributions out of this LLC, we're going to get it as your creditor. Now that's assuming they sued you and won and ran through all your insurance coverage, and there was a shortage, and they got a judgment against you for the shortage. Yes, they could attach any distributions coming out of that LLC. But there are ways around that too. In our LLC operating agreement, we have the ability to borrow money from the entity instead of take distributions.
So it almost makes me think that I wouldn't want one entity owning 10 things, maybe 3 or 5.
Well, that's a good point. And prior to November of 1997, the old days, we investors that were really paranoid had to set up separate LLCs as the beneficiaries to all these separate land trusts, and that got expensive and time
Yeah.
consuming. However, in November of 1997, Delaware was the first state to form what's called a series LLC. And I would encourage your listeners to Google series LLC and consider the benefits of a series LLC as the beneficiary of all those land trusts. And that might solve the problem that we're discussing here. And since we're running close on time, I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. Well, I was going to write something, but I can't figure out what's happening with my little text box thing. So, Series LLC, single member LLCs, all that. Okay. Awesome. Okay, Ken, Raphael, glad that helped a little bit. Okay, and now with the last 10 minutes or so, I'm going back to what Ken asked me before. Have you set up your own land contract on any of your notes or real estate? You mean land trust, Ken, I think? So far, I have not put any of my notes or deeds of trust or mortgages in a land trust, but I'll be going forward. Yes, any real estate I own is in a land trust with my entity, as except for my personal home. It's still, beneficiaries are in my personal name, but with other things, it's a corporate entity. But so any problems with title companies or anyone else? Thanks. Okay, so just on this, this is a deal that I just did. The one that Mike, I was telling you, Mike helped me with the BPO and helped me put this together. So here the deal was a gentleman that actually Cliff is working with, that he introduced me to that day that I went over to see him teach. And this gentleman is having a real cash crunch at the moment. He owns a property in Irvine that is worth about $550. He only owed to the bank about 185, call it that. But he, having a major cash crunch, has some other debts, trying to help one of his, I can't remember if it was kids or grandkids, pay for tuition for college. So, and since he's working with Cliff, it'll only be like 12 or 18 months before he's got his cash flow situation worked out around. So actually, Cliff came to me and said, "Can you give this guy a loan?" And of course, what did I say?
Maybe.
Consumer loans are actually incredibly very risky, especially to someone who can't prove any income. He has the ability to pay is a huge issue these days. So I said, no, I don't know anyone in their right mind who would give a owner occupant, he needed about $300 some $1,000. And I said, but here's what we can do. What will like, you can eventually get sued. There's nothing that's a golden hammer, but just throwing up as many obstacles as possible. I said, why don't we just do a sale leaseback with option to buy? So he'll sell it to me. And so this is what we, instead of me loaning him money, so we said the sale price was $340,000. And so I went to an attorney that has several clients, little old lady clients that can give great rates. Like I can usually get 9% money out of them sometimes. And I know you can do a lot better, Randy, but for me, 9% money is good on a big loan. On this one, I actually got 8.5%. So I got 100% loan to value. So wow, what's happening? That's loud over there. And so they gave me all the money to do it. Instead of like points, I just had like an option fee. So that was to pay me for the liability that I'll have taken it. And I wanted to take it in the name of a trust. So I wanted to hold title in a land trust. But here's what happened. I said, to the attorney who I know and trust, and we really like each other, and we've done several deals of just private loans in the past 4 years. But this is the first time that I've borrowed money from him to be a principal in a transaction. And I said, look, I'd really like to use a trust. And he said, oh my gosh, I haven't heard of trust since, 20 years ago when we were holding properties in trust in Arizona. And I said, yeah, it's just the same thing. And he goes, well, there's no trust law in California. And then I'm going, well, the laws actually are, there's no direct statute, but they're very supportive. And I said, he goes, well, what are you going to do with this deal? And I told him exactly how the deal was going out, that it was a sale leaseback. He's going to have the option to buy it back for the exact same price within the next 2 years. And basically, his lease payment is just going to cover PITI and HOA. And basically a little bit of management fees for me and for, paying everything. But he goes, well then, so there's an unrecorded assignment. Yeah. I said, first, he's going to put the property into the land trust. He's going to be the beneficiary. Then there's going to be an unrecorded assignment to me. So that's why I'm going to sign on the note agreement. And he's going, oh boy, oh boy, I don't think I like that. The unrecorded stuff, that just makes me think that, I'm getting my clients, now that I know, because you told me, now he used some legal term jargon, but now that I know, I don't know, it just sounds a little bit, different. I could be getting my clients in a point where they could be sued because this is just so unconventional. And I go, okay, I can appreciate that. He's an older guy, super nice. I said, David, would you be, it's fine. We can structure it the way you want. But just out of curiosity, just for maybe future reference, would you be willing to talk to Randy? Which obviously was you. He goes, well, who's Randy? And I said, well, he's a guy that actually is an educator, and he's been doing land trusts for his own account and teaching about it for years. And he's just really, well, is he an attorney? And here's where I made a mistake. Guess what I said to him, Randy?
No.
What I actually said was, no, he's smarter than an attorney. Oh, wait.
That was a
Wait,
mistake.
present company accepted. But anyway, I actually tried to get him to call you. I tried to get him to call Linda
Uh-huh.
Sands down in San Diego. And
Uh-huh.
it just made him that much nervous that he wouldn't fund the deal that way. So I actually had to take title directly in the name of my entity. And usually when I say entity, I'm thinking of those, crazy interdimensional things that attach to me at the local bar. There's this little crazy bar down the road that we go in maybe once a year just for the heck of it, but we always walk out with some entities attached to us. But in this case, I'm talking about a corporation. Um, so, I mean, any comments on all that? That was my struggle with this deal, is he wouldn't let me close in a land trust because he was nervous with all those unrecorded things. And frankly, title and escrow get all flustered every time I walk them through this thing. So,
Well, yeah, you might in the future consider this. In that scenario, you have the seller put his property into a land trust.
uh-huh.
The seller is the beneficiary. So in essence, he still is in control of the property somewhat. In other words, the tax benefits would flow through to him, and he would be the beneficiary. But you could make yourself the director. And what that means is, Dawn, the director tells the trustee what to do.
Oh my gosh, that's
So,
weird.
and what's interesting about that is if the beneficiary defaults and doesn't do what he's supposed to do in 2 years, you're the director. You just tell the trustee to deed the property out of that trust and wherever you want it to go.
Oh my gosh, that could have saved us. We could have kept it in a
Yeah,
trust. It's just that assignment back and forth and the option fee and blah blah blah. That's what got crazy for him. That's what killed the deal. So that would have
yeah.
saved it right there.
Yeah, I think you could have just solved all the problems with becoming the director. The trustee can't do anything the beneficiary tells him what to do
Mm.
because the beneficiary doesn't have the power to do so. And I think that would solve the problem. Um, I've written an article. I write a lot of articles about land trusts, but one of the recent ones for I can't remember what publication was called "The Power of Direction: The Velvet Hand Inside the Glove,"
Oh, well, that's clever.
and and that really sums it up. Um, the director has the power. He can shut that trust down in a heartbeat if he wants to, and since you were the lender, you would have the right to do that.
Yeah,
You'd want to
yeah,
have that type of
yeah,
control because you certainly don't want him to have control over a property you've loaned the money on.
yeah, definitely, definitely. Okay, well, we're here. Thank you so much. It's 10 o'clock. It's past your bedtime, and everyone here's tired too.
Oh,
So, right before we leave, what am I doing? I'm going to go over here to show people where they can sign up because you're coming out so in April, and so we're going to be seeing you. Here's it is live seminars, and you can go over here. Here it is, the Property Paper and Protection Summit right here. So if you go, click here, then it takes you to this page. So actually, that's called ultimatesummit.com, and I'll put this up on the website when we get this edited. But for right now, I suppose I can just oh
yeah, it's actually
dash. I'm
ultimate-summit.com.
going to type it into the little chat button here. So
Oh, yeah, good,
ultimate
good.
slash summit.com. This is going to be a lot of fun and a lot of intense learning. So basically, I'm at the bottom. Why am I at the bottom? I'm supposed to go first.
Uh,
I'm
yeah,
the alpha.
you
I
are.
am the alpha something here. Anyway, so if you want to come to that, it's really really I strongly suggest it. I hope I see some or all of you, if not that, at the Las Vegas event. So a lot of things happen when you're around just sitting talking to people about specific things. So that's that. And
Hey,
yeah,
Dawn.
last anything?
Yeah, excuse me, but for those people that cannot come to that event, if they want to just get my home study
Oh
course,
yeah,
can you show them how to do that through your website
yeah. Oh well, yeah.
or
I
through
mean,
my
here,
website, either
if
one?
you just go to my website, here's Randy's Land Trust Made Simple, right here down the left sidebar. That's the quickest, easiest way just to find him, is just right there. Just go to that little thing. So then
Yep,
you can get all over
just
there.
click on
And
that. And I've got several booklets on there that you can get for free. 50 reasons to use a land trust, land trust must read report. I've got a lot of really good land trust information on there that you can get for free, in addition to getting the home study course
yeah,
if you want.
so well, very awesome. Thanks again, and all my members. I really appreciate you being with me. So fun to have you on this journey, and really look forward to doing more as the months roll on. So, everyone, have a good night and sleep tight. All righty.
Thanks, Don.
All right. Bye bye.
Night, night.
Bye.
Bye.